Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 111. As ever, I'm your host, Jordan Edger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done our last one, but there actually genuinely isn't that much to go off of in the NBA space. There's been a few key games and a few topics that we'll reach out to. But first of all, how are you guys doing? Are you well today? Are you in the right old spirit to hash up some NBA chatter?
Yeah, not bad. There's as you say, there's not in terms of actual seismic movements in the NBA, a ton hasn't happened, but in terms of the individual level, quite a lot's happened. So
yeah. Well, I mean, let's jump straight into that in terms of individualness. That's the last time we spoke, there hadn't been two record. Oh, I don't know if you'd cast the second one as a record-breaking game per se, but Luka Doncic's 60-20-10, definitely a record-breaking game. No one's ever done it. Would you put Donovan Mitchell's in that? Lou, you're smirking. Did I get that stat line wrong? It was 60-20-10, wasn't it? Have I made myself look like
it was.
Oh, right.
It might have been one more assist.
The way I've seen it portrayed is 60. I don't think you're going to go 60-20-11 is how it is. I think it's been blocks like that. But I don't know if you class Donovan Mitchell's as a record-breaking game per se, because
the record he did was he broke LeBron James's highest points scored in a game for the Cavs. I think it was 58.
Oh, franchise high.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. For a franchise, yeah, we can claim the record-breaking one for it. The thing that I kind of want to talk about. I was going to talk about this at the end of the sort of towards the back end of the pod, but we'll chat about it now. If you had to, and this is a horrible question to ask both of you because they didn't know this was coming. If you're going to pick one that's more impressive, is it Donovan Mitchell's or is it Luka Doncic's? The strike fear across both of them. They're going first on this.
I'll let you go first for this one.
To me, I think probably the overall impact you're having in all areas of the game. Luka Doncic is one of the rebounding, the assisting, and the scoring is probably slightly more impressive to me because, as you said, it's never been done before. I actually took the liberty of looking up, the highest scoring games, like single games after this. We all know Wilt Chamberlain's got top with 100 and it's Kobe with 80. What I didn't know is that Wilt Chamberlain had he holds I'd say if there's 20, he probably has 16 of the top highest scoring games in NBA.
Do you know what's quite funny? Before we did this podcast today, earlier on today, I did a shorts that I filmed. So I just haven't edited it yet. And I looked up who else has scored Donovan Mitchell's 70 points one. So I was you just suspect Wilt. Obviously, everyone knows Wilt's 100. Yeah. Everyone knows Kobe's 81 game. But it was also Elgin Baylor getting 71. I didn't know that Elgin Baylor got 71. And then Devin Booker got 70. But Wilt being in it in the way I saw it, he was in the top sort of, out of the top 10, he was in there four or five times. I can't remember what it was now. But he's just, the Wilts ones are a bit of a meme for it. But
yeah, they are.
It don't surprise me with Elgin either, because he was averaging 34, 35 for multiple NBA seasons. So it was probably one where he just went absolutely ballistic.
Yeah, I think he's either one of the highest, maybe top 5 for one of the playoff ones as well, playoff single game scoring as well. I think Michael Jordan might be the first on that one, to be fair. So it's a pretty interesting company. Donovan Mitchell's in that as well. I think he got 57 points or something against the Denver Nuggets. In the bubble, I think, as well. So
it's in the playoff when Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell were just slugging at each other for it.
Exactly. That was a good series.
That was a great series. That was.
Yeah. I think we kind of know Donovan Mitchell has this sort of score. Well, from that we know he has the scoring gene. I'd say it's been a pretty long time since we've seen him go seismic like that, but he's been great for the Cavs. Pretty important in their upwards trajectory. They were a pretty good team last year as well, but they needed that go-to scorer, and he can be that for them regular season and in the playoffs. It just sort of depends on. He kind of dictates how far that team can go, really. But like I said, I find the Luka one a bit more impressive because he's impacting all aspects of the game, and it's because he has the ball all the time, which is something we've lamented about, the sort of limitations of a team that plays like that, really. So there's goods and bads to take away from it. But I mean, I was just looking at the leading scorers for this month. Well, not this month anymore, in December. And I know we had 30 points per game scorers for quite a good portion of the season, but there was a couple in December. You got Embiid, Doncic, Giannis, LeBron. SGA was on 30 points. Anthony Davis had 30 points.
Julius Randle must have been pretty close, no? Was he on that or not?
Julius Randle got 28, so pretty close. Zion just missed with 29. Jason Tatum had 30. Jokic had 29. Lillard had 29 as well. So, yeah, there's been a bit of a scoring explosion recently. Some really unbelievable stat lines. I think Clay got like 50 the other night as well, and
Clay dropped like 57. Yeah, Clay dropped like 57, when Wiggins and Steph was out from that. But before we finish this, did you give an answer? What one would you prefer? Like, what one do you seem as more impressive, the 71 or the 60-20-10?
The 60-20-10, definitely. 20 rebounds is a lot of rebounds as well.
I mean, Lewis, what are you, Doncic or are you Donovan?
I would also say Doncic, but I will say in terms of the actual scoring itself, I think Donovan Mitchell's, not just because of the fact he got more points, but who he did it on. Because I think a lot of the time in the Mavs game, it was just complete mismatches all the time for Luka. Whereas Mitchell being a bit smaller, I think he probably has to work a little bit harder to get those points. But even so, as Louis said, I just think in terms of all aspects of the game and the sheer stat padding, and well, not even padding, because that's the other crazy thing, is both of them needed every single ounce of effort that they put in to win the games, which, if you see someone scoring 70 or 60, you think that team's running away with it, but they didn't, and both of them went to OT, I think. But yeah, I'd go Luka just because, as Louis said, the all-around game is just unbelievable.
See, I think the only thing, I mean, I would agree. I'll prefix this by saying that I do think the Doncic one is far better. Well, not far better, but it's more, you sort of see the 60, the 20 and the 10. It's a historic number. No one's done it before, yada, yada, yada. But at the same point, I don't ever look at and go, "Cool, guys." I don't like in the mornings if we see, because majority of the games they'll start at sort of midnight at our time here in London, in the UK, right? But some of them will be 3 a.m. starts, so there's no way every night we're going to stay up and watch NBA games like that. Weekends, on a Sunday you might get a game that starts at 8 o'clock or something like that, and it's a bit more feasible for us. So we normally see them in the morning, right? And there's never, I don't think in the history that we've been doing the Swingman now, which is over 3 years, have I or either of you two gone, "Cool, check out this guy's game. He got 15 rebounds." So that's my only thing. Like, I'm more impressed by the points. The assists as well is like, if I see Ja Morant drops 40 and then he got 17 assists the other night, that's mental. I don't get as gassed. I don't think anyone gets as gassed. That you won't see on First Take, like Stephen A. going on about Julius Randle's 20 rebound point game. Like, it isn't a thing. Yeah. But
nah, not in isolation.
It's points first, yeah, but I will say, in tandem with it, I do think people hold rebounds in a decent regard. But I'd probably say it's about the same level as assists, really. Because I know the past month I've been looking at Giannis's games. I'm like, bloody hell, he's got 20 rebounds on with 40 or 50 points again for the third time in the past month. It's just nuts because I think you look at, when you see the assist with the points, you think about more of the offensive game as a whole, and the playmaking and the scoring combined. Whereas when I see the rebounding, I think more both ends of the floor, but also effort in general. When I see someone's got 20 rebounds along with a decent number of points, you just know that they've not taken a moment's rest for at any point in the game. And I think that's what makes it very commendable when people put up numbers like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can the one thing that's always in my head with rebounds is that Dennis Rodman is pretty much in the Hall of Fame for rebounding. So there's that. Defense. There is, and defense. But like, if you think of Dennis Rodman, like the worm, it is the rebounding side of his game for it. He has that clip in the Final Dance where he's just like, "Well, if I see the thing over there, I've got to jump over here and try and analyze everything," which is what he got. I don't think he got memed enough for it, is what I will say. But yeah, I mean, and scoring in general in the NBA, it's a tangent on from my Dennis Rodman impression of rebounding there. It does seem, I don't remember a period of the NBA in the last couple of years where just people are just putting up like 35 or 40 quite as casually as it seems that the NBA is at the moment.
I've got a stat line for you here.
Oh, here we go.
I saw on Twitter. I will say I have not verified this. So
it's not being fact checked. Oh, right, okay.
It's source Twitter, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently, the NBA is on pace to have the highest total points per game averages, so both scores in the game from each team combined, since 1985. So it's been a long while since we've seen this level of scoring in the NBA.
That's a good thing, though, isn't it? It's not a bad thing. I don't think anyone's moaning at that.
Depends how you feel about it. Some people think that, FIBA basketball, more traditional basketball, is the correct way to go. But, at least at a casual level, and I think most people, anyway, regardless of whether you're a casual or not, want to see more scoring in the NBA just for the excitement.
I was going to say I'm quite surprised that that's a record from 1985 because I kind of expected, the hand checking when the hand checking rules were brought in, and obviously the free throws as well got a little bit easier to get at some stage, and they've kind of pulled back on that in the last couple of years. And then the big 3-point explosion that's kind of happened ever since the Warriors became a thing. I'm quite surprised that's a record from 1985 personally, because I thought that'd just be a record that's being topped every single year. But this year we're getting a lot of high individual scorers, definitely.
I left out the bit of sarcasm on the tweet at the end, which was that vaunted golden era of defense that NBA fans clamour over. Do with that info what you will. So I think he.
But no fan is like, this NBA, it sucks at the minute. There's just too many points in these games. I don't think anyone's gonna. I don't know. I can't see. You could maybe look if it keeps exponentially growing and growing and growing. You might see those older games held into a different light. Like where in football we'd be like, yeah, but back in those days when Pele was playing, it doesn't really count for his goals and stuff like that. Do you think you could see a time where if in 5 years' time you compare someone's game to like a LeBron game at the Cavs and you go, oh yeah, but back in those days it was a lot harder to score? Like, do you think that's something that necessarily would come across with the NBA or not?
I think people do it now. You just got to look at when people bring up Wilt's scoring numbers and people say, the amount of possessions in the game, the amount of shots people were taking at the time, and they undermine those numbers a little bit because you can't really replicate them now. But I think you just have to take every instance from each period of NBA history in its own sort of vacuum. You can't really translate those things over. It's like when people ask how many points would so and so score in this day and age, and it's just everyone likes those questions, but you just can't really answer them. And I think most people go with the sentiment that the best players in throughout history will be able to do well in any era.
Yeah, I agree. It's not really the sort of question when you talk about LeBron at the Cavs, you oppose him, but if LeBron was in the league a couple of years later than he was, he would have known how to jump shoot a little bit better, and that completely changes the type of. It makes him a better player. I'm not saying he's a bad jump shooter now, but he took a couple of years to get there, really, didn't he? It's just little things like that. Like I'm sure kids when they're like coming for like 12 years old, they're probably hoisting up half court shots. Like it's just changing the entire way that the game is thought about, really, and how it's played. And I do think it is better. It's a lot more analytics driven, obviously. That's the big thing about it. But we want to see more scoring, as long as it's not just like endless free throws, which if you're watching someone like Joel Embiid, you're going to get a lot of those.
I genuinely thought we was about to throw it back about 2 years and you was about to dig out a James Harden thing then. Because every time I remember countless free throws,
it's the same as well.
Yeah, Luke. But that's their game. It's their part of their sort of arsenal of that how good at winning free throws that they are.
But it's just taking advantage of the rules, isn't it? Really, like you can't knock someone for taking advantage of what they've been given to produce with.
Yeah, on that topic you mentioned about James Harden, I do find it quite funny how people used to. We kind of do really on this podcast anyway, but people used to really criticise the way that the Rockets played, where it's so focused on James Harden and him just having all the possessions, and it's just like him driving, kicking out, whatever, winning free throws. And Luka does kind of do the same thing. And I know James Harden won an MVP. He can't be too hard up. He probably should have 2 more, though, if I'm being fair. Maybe one. Nah, one more. One more's fair. The Russell Westbrook one should have won. Not the Giannis one, maybe. But I think people are generally a lot more favourable in their response to Luka Doncic's style of play, and his passing, is better to watch. You know, he's got moves that he pulls out certain times that are just like unbelievable, breathtaking. But I much prefer watching someone like Jokic, if I'm honest. And then it's very slow and very methodical because he's a big guy. But I just think the stuff that he pulls out and the fact that he doesn't have the ball all the time, but it will go through him one stage or another, and he just pulls out some unbelievable pass. Is the type of basketball I prefer to watch, and the Warriors when they're in their full state, not as they are right now without Steph Curry, but they're doing pretty well. But that's just the type of basketball I prefer to watch. So the high scoring doesn't bother me. It's just the way that it's being done, if that makes sense. If it's a bit, it gets a bit.
I know exactly what you mean. I do. I can go back and forth on it because if I watch someone that's full on ISO playing each possession, you can look at it from an angle like, this is quite boring. They're just either looking for a free throw or just to get to the rim. But it's also like when you actually watch someone proper ISO down and break a defender, I do think that's one of the best things to watch in basketball. But that being said, my favourite team to watch at the moment this season has been Indiana, just because it's either one way or the completely the other. Because there's so many guys on the Pacers where they can all get involved. Like that Andrew Nemhard game against the Warriors, we've gone completely off tangent here. But in terms of just general team play, I think they work really well as like a unit. It's going to get, I do think it'll end up getting broken apart by February, but they've been quite entertaining to watch, the Pacers, as an overall thing, which annoys me because it means that Lewis's over is going to come in, but it's what it is.
Yeah, it's too late now. It's gone. It's gone now. It's coming in regardless of whether they make a trade now. I
mean, on that topic, I quite like watching the Kings as well, and every single one of their plays kind of goes through Sabonis if you watch it, but it's just not in that type of way. And I'm not against ISO. I like watching Kyrie play ISO ball and Kevin Durant.
Kyrie is the best. Kyrie is the best at ISO stuff. Yeah,
it's just again, it depends on the type of ISO play. If it's just someone kind of going for a free throw a little bit, it wears on me a little bit after a while.
You can say it, Louis.
I appreciate it.
You can say James Harden. We know you're fitting with rage to say James Harden.
He's just not that. Joel Embiid does it. Yeah. Those games are quite stop-starty, and it suits them. And I'm not knocking that because they're playing quite well at the moment as well. With that, it's just not very entertaining for me. And Luka does it as well. But yeah.
The thing that gripes me about Embiid is that this is not new tactical analysis. This is what everyone moans about Joel Embiid for. He's like 7'1", and something's just come on for me there. He's like 7'1", and every time, sort of in the last moments of the game, he's not under the paint. He's not in the paint, just trying to bully ball his way to the rim, which is not his only asset, but it's a key asset of his game. He's trying to spark up from 20 feet, get inside. I think that's just a common thing that's known of Embiid now for a couple of years' time. I don't think he's ever going to change it. He should, but I don't think he ever will. But yeah, I know what you mean in terms of the ISO sort of stuff for it. But we'll move on from sensational scoring because we could genuinely talk about this for about an hour and a half in terms of everyone who's putting up 30-point games at the moment. Like Gary Trent Jr. as well. That came out of nowhere from him starting for Toronto, but we'll talk about them later. We'll move on to who's selling and who's buying. Now, this is in the run-up to the playoffs. This is in the run-up to the trade deadline that's coming now. So this will be in and around the times where it's normally a domino effect. I think you'd all agree. When one big trade happens, that's when everyone goes, oh my God, it's happening. It's that meme from The Office. That's where it starts. There's trades flying about left, right. People have made moves. It then decides what teams are going to do for the rest of the season. They can see who's making moves to try and push on or who's going to make moves to try and drop down the league. So I think the team we wanted to talk about most, I know Louis, me and you do in terms of one of the higher ones, are Toronto. They've got a big 6-game stretch now where they've got some key games in this where they're going to be like, if they don't make a dent in those, it seriously is time for Toronto to think about Van Vliet, a few of the other guys. Do you think Siakam's in the list there on the chopping block?
Yeah.
Or would he? Probably. There's Scotty Barnes.
No, he's not.
Do you think they keep Scotty Barnes?
I think, yeah, he'd be the only one I'd say 100% they'd keep. I think Van Vliet, I think Siakam, I think Anunoby would all potentially.
Well, so keep Scotty Barnes.
In my head,
get rid of OG Anunoby.
Okay. Yeah, I think they'd fetch a lot, basically.
Yeah, I've seen a few reports going around about OG and in terms of that a lot of the NBA insiders think they'd get a lot more for OG than the general public thinks he's worth, and that he's valued quite highly across the league. So if I was to think about the Raptors, I do think he'd be probably the main one that would set things in motion.
See, the thing is, though, is is it not too early? Even though, like, have they not got another season in them? Because you just have these teams where sometimes it doesn't work one year and then they hold on for a little bit and they can reassess next year. If you're getting rid of like Van Vliet, Siakam, I think there's a part of me that would maybe think it's a bit, I don't want to use the word reactionary, but maybe reactionary to this season and just hold on to them for another year and then reassess. Like, is there any benefit of keeping these guys whilst also simultaneously not tanking per se, but just playing them out? Because at the moment they're going to be dropping down towards the league anyway, the way it's been for them. Is there any benefit to that, or do you think no, just scrap the guys, full tank, play the young guys, and then go competitive losses?
I guess they've kind of been teetering on this edge of it for a while, you would say. I mean, they had a good season last year and they made the playoffs and they were impressive to do that, really. They weren't good the year before when they were playing in Tampa. So they've always been on the edge of this a little bit, and I just feel like in my head Masai is quite an aggressive GM in comparison to others. I don't see him really wanting to stand pat. And I just think the prize for tanking this year is so much greater than it usually is. Obviously, we've got Wembanyama, who could be a generational prospect at the one, but then you got Scoot Henderson, who I sort of done some ridiculous dunk in the G League yesterday, and he looks like a really good prospect. And by all intents and purposes, this draft class is really good. So yeah, I guess at some point you just have to pull the trigger a little bit, because there is a ceiling to this team, and I don't think it's going to be a championship contender with like Scotty Barnes. I don't think he can evolve into well, maybe he can do it, but I don't think he's going to evolve into a guy that's the number one guy on a championship team. So they need to get that from somewhere, and not typically a free agent destination. They kind of have to either trade for someone like they did for Kawhi or go through the draft. So yeah, it is definitely a discussion. It's a debate. I think there are some teams that should 100% like blow it up instantly. Toronto aren't one that I would say like, definitely need to do that, but I think they should definitely be considering it, because I even though they're not playing well, a lot of their assets probably are quite well valued. I think Van Vliet he's got a really palatable contract as well, and I think they could get some real goods for him. Siakam may be more difficult because he earns a lot more money, but I really like Siakam. I think he's a good player. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but I think overall they should be looking at it quite seriously.
I've got a little. Oh, go on, Lewis.
I don't know if you got something else to say, you go for it first.
It is. No, it's nothing on that per se. It's a little exercise that I did think about doing. But is there anything you wanted to touch on with Toronto before we move to it?
No, we're not with Toronto, so you go.
So when I was thinking about, because I know we were talking about this just prior to we hit the big red record button. I was thinking about some of the stuff to talk about on trade deadline stuff and teams that are maybe looking at acquiring someone and who's going to sell. And in doing so, I thought, why don't I find some of the mainstream media articles before the season started on what trade should happen and what they think is going to happen and so on and so forth come the trade deadline in February. So I found an article from October that lists 6 things that they think should happen by this trade deadline. So there's been enough time now. October's far away, right? There's enough time has passed. And basically, I'm going to get you two to analyze if you guys think that this was just a load of rubbish that's been written, or if there was any merit to it because you could see it happening now. So the first one was they're talking about how trades are going to happen by like the 15th of December because that's when people sign contracts, or people that have signed contracts in the summer can be moved. So we'll scrap that one. But the second one is Russell Westbrook will be traded to Indiana. Do you see this happening or do you not?
Well, I said when we did our over-unders that, I didn't think it was a definite, but gun to my head, I thought, I can actually see Westbrook staying with the Lakers in that they have to sort out that 6-man role and then roll with it for the season. I don't know why. I can't it was like a gut feeling. I just thought the Pacers were just going to stay with what they've got for the season. I didn't think they'd do the Lakers trade. So that definitely had some legs, I think, mainly because you could see that there were people in the Lakers.
It's more if you think it's going to happen still or not. Do you think it can still happen?
It can, obviously it can still happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'll stick with what I said before. I just think the Lakers aren't really going to get anything.
Louis, do you think it's still got legs that this trade could happen?
Yeah, in my head they should be buying because they've got LeBron James and he's signed a contract for a reason, and Anthony Davis is out for a while, so the only way they get him by is if a pure LeBron carry job. But I don't think they want to send those 2 first-round picks to get rid of Russ, and that's not an insult to him. He's playing quite well at the minute, but he just earns so much money, and he's not really a great asset. I don't think it is going to happen. No.
You don't think it will? I mean, the tagline that was at the end of this point was ending this marriage that never should have taken place is best for everyone. So they were very bullish on that. For reference, this is Bleacher Report. I'm taking.
I mean, that overall off season was disastrous for them in the long run. Really, when you look at it.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I think they should do it, but I don't think it will happen. Because I think you get the random Westbrook games, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, it can work," and then it just never really does. So, the next one was these notable non-stars will get traded. So they predicted that Harrison Barnes of the Kings will be traded, Jay Crowder of the Suns will be traded, and then Eric Gordon of the Rockets will be traded, and also Gary Trent Jr. of the Raptors. From there, I see 2 of them, maybe 3 getting traded, which, to be fair, I think that's a decent prediction then from the Bleacher Report. My opinion is that I think Barnes is staying at the Kings. I don't think they're in a move. They're not going to move Harrison Barnes on. I think the Kings are they're looking to add. They're not going to be getting away any of their I wouldn't put Harrison Barnes as a main guy, but he's definitely a good overall starting unit player for them. I can definitely see a move being made for Eric Gordon because Eric Gordon does not want to be in the prime vintage years of his NBA career sticking around on the Rockets. I can also see Gary Trent Jr. will definitely be a part of if the Raptors sort of quote unquote blow it all up. He'll be in around. The Jay Crowder thing, I'm not really sure what's happening with Jay Crowder and the Suns, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I think he was really sort of disgruntled in the off season. He really wanted to get a move, but I don't think anyone really wants to. They want to get quite a lot for him. I can see it happening where they're like, "Oh, we just got to cut our losses here," because he's kind of bad mouthing them a lot at every single corner. So I can see that happening, but they're just going to have to accept a lot less because they wanted a guy in return. Because Jay Crowder has been quite important for them over the last couple of years.
He was good in the finals, yeah.
Yeah. He just got annoyed that he got benched last season. He just has, I think back in Memphis, they could do a bit of Jay Crowder. I think they should be on the buy-in list because I do think they missed someone. I can't tell you who. I have no clue who it would be. I think they need someone.
It's that pizzazz, is what you're saying.
Much like I need my laptop charger right now, so I'm going to...
nice segue.
I'm going to excuse myself for a second.
Go and get your laptop charger. So, Lewis, out of those 4, what 4 do you think... Do you think the Bleacher... in terms of the Bleacher Report, their prediction, what 4 do you think did they get right?
I mean, the number one for me that I really thought was going to happen was the Eric Gordon one because he is the perfect player for, especially in the playoffs, one of the bigger teams who look like they're looking like they want to go somewhere because he just is a good 3-point shooter. He's a good vet. He's a great scorer, and he won't take anything away from your team. He will only add to it. And he definitely is not enjoying his time in Houston. No. So I'd be surprised if he's not gone. The others, I agree with you on Harrison Barnes. I don't think the Kings, even though they got Sabonis, they wanted him to hit bar their franchise, and they thought he'd improve them a lot. I don't think they thought it'd actually click this well this early. And so, like you, I think Harrison Barnes is going to stay because I think Sabonis has really hit the ground running. He's playing very well at the moment, and the Kings are looking like a great team. After that, the Gary Trent Jr., we spoke on Toronto earlier. I think, as you say, he is one of those players that could also do some things for some of the better teams in the league and could potentially be on the trading block. But for me, Eric Gordon is the number one there.
That's the number one then. Yeah, no, totally. Okay. The next part of this, there's this and two more, so we won't spend too much on this. But they predicted that at least one of Charlotte, Chicago, Sacramento, and Washington will sell hard, and by that I mean that they're just going to completely tank all of their stars and get rid of them. I think again has merit. I think Charlotte definitely want to move on some of their guys, which they'll struggle now because Oubre Jr. is out for like 6 weeks, and he was one of their not their main assets, but he was one of the. He's a guy that they could have got some value for, definitely. Chicago are definitely they're in a worse state than Toronto are in terms of moving on their stars. Sacramento, no, and Washington, they can't really move Bill, but Kuzma and potentially Kristaps could definitely also go. So I'd say that's a fair assumption. A couple of months back for them. I don't know if you disagree with me, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think Chicago are going to do it now, but at the end of the season, they're 100% getting rid of someone.
You don't think they're going to move? Levine looks properly like every time I open Twitter, it is Zach Levine is ridiculously unhappy and wants to leave.
I agree, and I think he's going to be the one to move on. I just don't think it's going to happen mid-season. I think it'll be at the end.
I can see maybe not a big swinger like a DeRozan or a Levine. I'm not sure what value Vucevic has, considering he.
Well, I was about to say, if Vucevic doesn't get moved by this deadline, they might have to pay someone to take Vucevic away because he's not looking good this year.
A terrible trade. I mean, they got Wendell Carter Jr., who's turned out to be quite
who's
good.
Better. Yeah, who's better than Vucevic, really?
Better, he's
I think for the age of what he is, he's marginally worse, and he plays defense. So
I think it's what he offers, because he offers something quite different to Vucevic, and I think you look back now at the Bulls team and think, you know what, they could probably do with a bit of that.
Yeah, they could do. I'd rather have Wendell Carter Jr. than Vucevic.
Yeah.
That might not mean he's better, but I'd rather.
If you ask the majority of Bulls fans, I guarantee they'd say they'd rather have Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
I think the bigger thing in that is that he also gave up a draft pick that turned out to be Franz Wagner, who is a very good player as well. Yeah. Poor old Chicago Bulls fans. Not made the finals since 1998. So
no.
But yeah, I can see a mini one. Maybe Vucevic, Caruso. Caruso would have a lot of value this mid-season. I would like to see him on the Warriors or something like that. And he's got a decent contract. I think he's one that could go. And I agree with Lewis. I tend to see the bigger ones maybe going in the summer. Zach Levine, he's got a lot of knee issues as well. You have to take that into account when you're trading for him. But yeah, Beal makes way too much money. Charlotte, again, I don't know who they've got to trade. Miles Bridges will be back there next season as well. They'll get a high draft.
Has PJ Washington got much worth? I don't really. I mean, they're not going to get rid of LaMelo. So I'm trying to think of like Mason Plumlee.
Terry Rozier, maybe.
Terry Rozier, yes, Scary Terry, yeah, could be.
Gordon Hayward's permanently injured, so.
Yeah, I mean, no one's trading for Gordon Hayward. No one's trading for Gordon Hayward.
So. There's no way. There's no way.
There's no way.
All three of those are not. We're discounting Sacramento, aren't we?
Yeah, we'll discount Sacramento. But I mean, it's only one of them anyway, so they've nailed that one. We'll give them. Cleveland and Miami trade for a member of their go-to closing lineup. I mean, in terms of the Cavs, I'm not really sure what the holes are for their closing lineup. For the Heat, it's quite obvious because they don't like playing Duncan Robinson there because he can't play defense at all, and that was the one big issue with him. And then when they lost PJ Tucker, then they don't have a guy. So the Heat definitely, I can see making a trade for someone. I don't really know about the Cavs in terms of if they'd be looking this year potentially for it. It depends on the accelerant and how well they do and how others do. I can definitely see Miami looking for someone.
Yeah. Are Miami a low-key a bit of a selling team?
So you think Miami sell?
No, I don't think they do because they got Jimmy Butler. And if you got Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, you can probably win a series.
So Jimmy Butler is literally the definition of I don't care about. He's basically Kawhi, but just like not as good as Kawhi in terms of what we've seen before.
Is there a point where Jimmy Butler gets a bit annoyed with the Miami Heat team?
No, there's no way. Jimmy's the guy though. Jimmy's the guy in Miami, and I don't think there's a team that are better than Miami where he can go to and also be the guy. And if he goes below, he won't be competing. Like Miami will be in the playoffs; they will be competing no matter what. Realistically, they do. There isn't a team in the league where Jimmy Butler could go to and still be the number one guy, but also still compete to a level what Miami could potentially offer him. So I can't see Jimmy, and plus it's Miami. Like that's the whole attractiveness of it. So I can't see Jimmy getting frustrated. Like to me, he epitomizes the whole Miami thing. I was sad when he left Philly, but it just made quite a lot of sense for both parties there in terms of that. I don't know who they'd get in terms of who's available, but yeah.
I guess you'd say the weak defensively from their closing lineup, because he might not work, but Tyler Hero is kind of like the guy you pick on a little bit as well, and he's really important to them, which is the kind of like what do you do a little bit about it. But I don't see them trading anyone now. With the Cavs, they probably just want someone that in place of Okoro. He's what you'd say is a sort of like weak link of that.
I mean, Gary Trent Jr. makes a little bit of sense for the Cavs, but I don't know if that trade can happen between the two of them. They might need a third for that, but
yeah, that would be nice. Or even, I mean, OG would be, I think, a bit of a dream as well. So
yeah,
that's the only position I could say. But how much does that raise the ceiling for them? I'm not too sure, because at the end of the day, I think the best player wins you the playoff series. And going through it, Donovan Mitchell, I really like him. He obviously scored 71 we talked about earlier, but how many of those players, you got Giannis, you got Embiid to get through. Who's who else we're talking? Tatum,
Celtics,
Butler, you take KD. Butler as well. KD Kyrie. Yeah. So it's
I will say, you say that there, if the Heat and the Cavs did match up round one in the playoffs, I would take the Cavs all day over the Heat.
Probably.
So even with what you said before.
Oh, that's a spicy take. That was like brushing them aside like they're nothing there.
I don't think that's too spicy at the moment. Yeah, I know.
What? The Cavs brushing their Heat? It's playoff buckets. It's Jimmy B.
I'm not saying there's sweep them. I'm just saying I would definitely pick the Cavs to win that series. I just think they look like a much better basketball team.
In saying Jimmy Buckets and Playoff B, I just remembered Playoff P and the whole Paul George thing. That really didn't go well. Playoff P was not the thing to say, was it? That was a really interesting.
He came through the year after, in fairness.
Yeah, it did, but it was the whole I'm Playoff P. I just laughed about that.
Maybe not the year after. Actually, I think it was the year after that. So it was a delayed prediction.
I would love to think that their locker room is like close enough that they can take the mick out of him and just be Playoff P will carry us, and I don't think it will be, but I'd love to.
No,
think
I don't think they'll take the mick out of him for that.
I can't see Kawhi ribbing him for that. And the last one that they had here is that the Brooklyn Nets will trade at least one of their stars. So that's either Ben Simmons, KD, or Kyrie. And I think that was definitely something you could have foreseen 2 or 3 months ago. But in the current climate, it's absolutely not happening. The Nets have just been ridiculous since it's all kind of clicked into them. So, but like we've spoken about before, are we now just are we like, Kyrie's going to do something in a minute and it's all going to go wrong? Is that what we're waiting for? Or do we think we're sort of past that whole drama hill and it's not there?
The Nets are rolling, man. They're like they're playing.
I thought he was about to say the Nets are rubbish then. That's the genuinely No.
The Nets are playing really well. If any team in the East would look at that Nets roster and think, it's there's certain teams, even when they've got a good record, you're like, you know what, we've probably got them. But I think any team in the East looks at this Nets team and think they are a problem.
I think the Nets are so deep as well, but it's not even like the Steph Currys and I mean, I know we've spoke about Joe Harris before, Howard, because I've got him on so rare, but Joe Harris has just played terribly this season. I think that the Nets may be biased, they've got loads of depth, but TJ Warren's come back and TJ Warren's look really, really good, but I think they could go for someone else.
The thing with the Nets is they can score with the best of them, but it's always been a lack of inside presence. And if you come up against someone like a Giannis or an Embiid,
Nick Claxton locks them down.
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to be able to sustain with just that? But just the raw output that team puts up is just mental.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of I thought that was a little change of motion in terms of going through some of those sort of stuff. Yeah. The other one was talking about Lauri Markkanen, but I'm not going to claim it, but I think Lauri Markkanen's taking some substances. Is all I'll say this season. From photos of photos that are in this image to what he's like now. Are, wow, whatever protein powder that man's on, get it advertised. Is all I'm saying. He's a mega chad.
He's fuming from the last game because that's
the 0.4, the little fader, yeah. It was, I never looked. He was dejected as hell when he was leaning over the scorer's table when that got ruled out. Because it was an unreal shot as well. He basically was like, "There's a midget on me, just lob it long, and I'm going to catch it."
To respond to that.
Okay, my watch just called me there. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know how that happened. But yeah, that's pretty much it. What else do we have to round this out with? So, Warriors woes. Now, before we started this, we normally run through some of the topics that we're going to go off of, and I got some slack, some heat from these two on the Warriors have been doing really well recently, but it's more of the when I say Warrior woes, they are sort of they are one of the best teams in the league at home, but away from home, I make the case that they are in the bottom 5 in the league. They absolutely stink up the joint wherever they travel. Now, on that case, when you get into a playoff series, does this not make the Warriors like what? Can you actually see them clicking it and changing it come the playoffs, or is this just sort of a mental block that is just there now for the rest of the season? It's a bit of a rubbish one, but I know it's here.
Yeah, when you say make the case, you don't have to make the case. Just look at the bloody win-loss. It's terrible for them for them away. But I think with the Warriors more than almost any other team or any other franchise in the NBA, you were talking before how about you cut Jimmy Butler a lot of slack because he's performed in the playoffs so much. So if he doesn't part of the regular season stats, you can take it to one side because what the production you're going to get later on. I think with the Warriors, they're one of those franchises where you give them the benefit of the doubt that when it comes to playoffs, they will be able to put it together. Unlike maybe a team like the Clippers, who we've said a couple seasons now, if they don't get the games under the belt with their lineups, then they're not going to be able to put it together. And I think that speaks a lot to the people, the higher ups in the Golden State franchise, Steve Kerr, Steph Curry. They've put a culture in place. You could probably give more of it to Steve Kerr and Steph Curry than anyone else, but yeah, I just include everyone in it because it's such a great franchise that you trust them to be able to put the pieces together when the postseason comes around.
Yeah,
they were the one. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say they were really poor in the run into the playoffs last season as well. And that I was quite down on them coming into the playoffs. I think I had them going.
I don't remember that
in the semis.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think I was there as well with you.
Yeah,
I think Lewis wasn't. Lewis was the only one that didn't.
I think I had them conference finals. I want to say.
Yeah. So you had the Suns going through to the finals. I think we all had the Suns going.
I can't remember. I really can't. I think I did have the Suns, but
Suns were pretty steep. They were steamrolling the league last year. In fairness, so wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, they pull it together when it matters. I do think they need to I think some reshuffling would be good, but I don't expect them to get to the NBA Finals this year, if I'm honest. If you look at the record of teams that have been to the NBA Finals...
Clip that.
You can clip it. If you just look at the record of in the recent years anyway, that have been to the NBA Finals, they don't get there next year, and I think wear and tear is a real thing. Especially, Steph's out now it will only be a couple more weeks now, I guess, from this point on. But yeah, it can catch up to you. I think my official predictions before the season started were the Bucks and the Nuggets, and I feel quite good about that. I still feel quite good about that. I think the Nets throw a spanner. The Nets throw a spanner.
I don't like making any predictions really until after the trade deadline. That's when the trade deadline comes and we do our podcast. That's when I actually when the trade deadline happens, we should do an initial playoff bracket and do it from there. And then when it comes, we can look back on it and then we can go from there. And basically, you two can laugh at how bad I probably get it wrong. I think the only thing with the Warriors, though, I'll say is that, but maybe you can exclude Kuminga from this. But Moody and Wiseman have been terrible draft picks at the moment for them. And it's weird because Wiseman, I would have said that I'd have been not bullish, but I'd have been confident on how he would have helped the Warriors. And it's not. I mean, he got sent to the G League. Like they're not fans of him, it seems, at the moment. So those three have been, but
The thing about Wiseman is you see flashes of what he can do or how he can perform for the Warriors and how he could be a very good NBA player. And it's one of those things, because he's young, you can give him a bit of time, but you want to see that progress or that consistency soon, because the longer it goes, just the more and more that potential starts to fade away. So I still think Wiseman. I mean, I think most people still think Wiseman could be a very good NBA player, but you just want to.
Oh yeah, it's not busted for him, but it's just I don't think it's gone quite how well people thought it would have done.
It hasn't had the immediate impact that everyone thought it would be, in that it was a position that the Warriors could really do with.
I'll say I quite like Moody. I think this is slightly harsh. You know, that's hit neither here nor there. I don't think he's going to win them a championship or anything. I think Wiseman is a whiff, considering the players that were taken after him. I mean, after that is LaMelo Ball, isn't it? Which fit there is strange. Tyrese Halliburton was a whiff in several franchises in the NBA. Where did he go? Like 13th, 14th? And the Sacramento Kings traded him as well. It kind of worked out for the both of them, that one. I'm not too mad on that trade. I didn't like it at the time. But I think he would fit well on this team. Just as like I know they've got Jordan Poole as well, so they've got the 3 guards in rotation. I just think any team in the league could do a Tyrese Halliburton, but maybe it's better that he went up to a team eventually where he was allowed to be the main man, because he's an all-star this year, in my estimations.
Yeah, I did see something that was along the lines of everyone involved in that, all the main players in that Kings Pacers trade is probably going to end up being an all-star this season. So it's weird, because I don't think there really is ever a win-win trade. There's always someone that comes out better off. But you look at, if you asked both teams now, whether they're happy with what they've done, with what they did, I think both would end up saying yes. I don't think anyone thought the Kings would get the immediate production and chemistry between Fox and Sabonis, or just Sabonis and the rest of the team in general, that they've currently got. And even though I think everyone knew what Halliburton could be, he really has already started to prove it.
Can't disagree there. Right then, I mean, that covers me in terms of everything I wanted to go through. Is there anything either of you two wanted to chat about before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that's it. Maybe I saw some of the reasoning about the scoring being so high this year. Quite a few people were talking about the lack of the take fouls, and maybe that's stopping defenses getting set and getting them a bit more tired, which might be adding to the scoring being a bit more. I know quite a few people disagree with that as well, and think it's just better players taking better shots, but with better efficiency. Who knows? We'll see in the years to come. I think if that keeps going up or if
it could just be at the minute, it could just be an outlying year, and it's just a freak year in terms of everyone's hitting certain performance highs and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll see that how it develops. But if not, we will wrap that one up there. Thank you very much for listening. If you are watching at this point still on our YouTube or on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, whatever it is that you're watching on, if you could drop a sub, would mean a lot to us. Also, just drop a like and maybe leave a comment as well, because it pushes us through into the algo gods, and then it leaves in their hands, and everything that goes with it. It would be very appreciated to us, because it helps us out more than you can imagine. Check us out on all of our social medias at Swingman Pod, and check out our website www.swingmanpod.com. But until then, we will catch you in the next podcast. Cheers for listening. Peace.